My name is Max Gagliardi, and this is the Talk Energy Podcast. If you're watching this video, take a moment, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or you can follow me on your favorite podcast app, leave a review, help me out. I really appreciate it. This episode is sponsored by Blockware Solutions. If you're interested in Bitcoin mining at all, maybe you've listened to the podcast, you've heard some of the guests that I've had on, maybe you're an energy producer, Blockware Solutions has a wide range of products, including new and used ASICs that you can buy from them, a trusted retail provider. Don't go to some random website. Go to Blockware Solutions. You can reach out to me. You can reach out to the link that I'm about to provide. But if you're looking to buy ASICs, Blockware is a reliable vendor that you can trust to get them delivered to you. Or you can go to Blockware if you're looking for hosting solutions. Blockware has Bitcoin mining experience going back to 2013. They've sold over 250,000 ASICs. They've done over 200 megawatts of hosting for their clients, and they've mined over 1,000 Bitcoin from the Blockware pool. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit blockwaresolutions.com/energy. That's blockwaresolutions.com/energy. This episode we recorded at the Digital Wildcatter's Empower conference, where I interviewed Cully Cavness, the president of Cursoe Energy Systems, and Bruce Larson, the president and CEO of Kraken Oil and Gas. Cully is the OG natural gas Bitcoin miner. He's been mining with Bitcoin and natural gas since I believe back to 2018. His company, Cursoe, has been a pioneer in this space. They've got a vertically integrated suite of services, everything from the software side to the power generation side. These guys have really paved the way, him and others in the industry, but Cully has definitely been at the forefront of Bitcoin mining using flared or stranded natural gas. It's also great to hear Bruce's perspective. This is a panel that we did, and Bruce is someone who's a traditional oil and gas operator. So to hear the solution that Bitcoin mining solved for his company. I think the audio quality is good enough. It may be a little bit of ambient noise because this was recorded outside, but it's a fantastic interview. And I'm going to be posting one more from the Digital Wildcatter conference that I did. Hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, we're going to get it kicked off. My name is Max Gagliardi. I'm co-founder of the Ancova group of companies, including Ancova Digital, which is our Bitcoin mining platform. I've got two guests here. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Thanks, Max. I'm Bruce Larson. I'm president and CEO of Kraken Oil and Gas. We operate about 250 wells in the Williston Basin of Montana and North Dakota and mine some Bitcoin.
My name's Cully Cavness. I'm the co-founder and president, chief operating officer of Cursoe Energy Systems. We really pioneered this flare gas to Bitcoin mining business model. We scaled it up in large part with Kraken as one of our very first clients, and they continue to be one of our bigger clients that we've really grown with, and I've always appreciated their partnership.
Since it all starts with energy, Bruce, why don't you start out giving a little history on Kraken and talk about your background a bit, and then we'll work into the Bitcoin side.
Yeah, no, that's a good intro. I think I've been in the oil and gas industry for about 25 years, and Kraken's been in the Williston Basin for about 10 now. So we've kind of seen the play grow. We've seen it ebb and wane, and as it's grown over the years, the capacity of our ability to sell gas is based on the capacity of a lot of the midstream providers up there. And so as they can't keep up, if we want to go drill wells, ultimately we've got a problem. We've got to flare the gas, or we've got to find some solution where we don't have to flare it and we can use it. And over the last probably 3 or 4 years, there's been a lot of folks that have come out to our sites and said, hey, we can help you here. We've tried them all. We like to pioneer. When the Bitcoin thing popped up, it was pretty cool and interesting. So we partnered with a couple of groups, piloted it, and it's been pretty straightforward. But from an operator standpoint, there's nothing complicated about setting these guys up. We produce mostly oil with some associated gas, so it's a little bit different than other plays that are purely gas. As we get the oil out of the ground and the gas comes with it, we either sell it, or if we don't have a sales line readily available, we would just direct it to a separate process where we would burn the gas in a generator. The generator would then plug into the miners, and then from there, Cully takes it. We don't have any direct hand in the mining of the Bitcoin, but from an operation standpoint, it's very simple to set up, and it takes some space on the pad site, but that's about the most of it.
Does it feel very much like midstream? It's like digital midstream, right? I mean, effectively, you're indifferent whether it's going to a pipeline or a Bitcoin mine. Someone's coming up and providing a solution, and essentially it's pretty seamless for you guys, right?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, since I've been in the industry. Most people out, maybe to contrary belief, most of us don't want to flare gas. We'd rather sell it for a profit if we can find avenues and outlets. But in the Bakken's unique because our revenue is driven mostly by oil. So we don't need the revenue from the gas necessarily to justify drilling for the oil we produce. But in cases like this, it's always better to try and hook it up. And the Bitcoin, the mobile or the on-site solutions like the data miners and the Bitcoin folk, they're to us just a secondary source of midstream, right? So if we can't find gas pipelines, we call Cully and they help.
Cully, why don't you, some people know about the flared gas side of it, but talk about just the genesis of Cursoe, when the light came on for you guys, the problem that you realized that you could solve, and just some of the history and background on digital flare mitigation and the problem you're solving.
Yeah, so we started in 2018, and at that time, the idea that you would capture stranded natural gas and generate power for Bitcoin mining was pretty crazy to most people. And honestly, it was something that we were nervous that oil companies would dismiss as this can't possibly be a real solution at an industrial scale solution. My background is from the oil and gas industry. I was a geologist. I actually started my career in renewable power. I started off in geothermal power plant development, mostly internationally, and then I came back to my hometown of Denver, Colorado, and was working at an investment bank. There was an oil and energy-focused investment bank, and from there I went to an operator, and I was a vice president of finance at a privately backed oil and gas producer, and we were drilling wells in an area that was a little bit outside the core activity of the Niobrara, the Colorado shale play. And when we brought those wells online, like Bruce was mentioning, those were oil-oriented economics. The wells are being drilled, searching for oil revenue, and there was no gas pipeline takeaway in that area. So the oil gets trucked to the refinery, and this is a common model that you see across the industry, and the gas was being flared. And this caused me really a lot of concern. I mean, I went to college in Vermont, and I went through this very deep indoctrination in sort of the environmental and climate side of this conversation on energy, and the idea that they would just waste all the energy from the gas, and that there's this kind of uncombusted, unmitigated methane stream on top of that. It's a real bad problem. It's regulatory, it's environmental, it's economic problem. And I've been interested in Bitcoin since early on, since 2012 or so, and started mining as a hobbyist at a smaller scale in 2017. And the light bulb moment was really just, there's this enormous stranded, wasted energy stream that's causing all kinds of environmental problems and a black eye for the oil industry over here. And there's this rapidly scaling demand for power from data centers in general, but especially Bitcoin mining on the other side. And there's going to be a ESG concern around that as well, as it draws a lot of power from, it depends on which source you use. The best possible source would be a completely wasted energy source. You're not tapping the grid, you're not adding any emissions, you're simply just taking an additional, you're taking a wasted energy source and repurposing that for something beneficial. So we piloted that at a small scale, and Bruce and Kraken were one of those very first pilot projects. I'd be curious to hear from your perspective why you chose to scale up with us as opposed to some of the other options you looked at. But now we went from that one first data center just with Kraken. We've got more than 110 either deployed or under contract. 84 of them actually deployed. Another handful under contract for deployment soon. And within Kraken, I think we've got 20 plus units across half a dozen sites. So we've really scaled from that one proof point to really now an at-scale multi-million cubic feet per day solution, and fully combusting that methane, getting that greenhouse gas equivalent number down, because methane is 84 times as powerful as CO2. So fully combusting it compared to the flare that doesn't fully combust is a big benefit for the near term, to just clean up the process of producing this oil that we do need and will continue to produce for many years.
Yeah, let me follow up there, because from an operator standpoint, we looked at doing multiple things with the gas we were flaring, and it's an energy intensive problem. So we tried to generate our own power on site to use for some of our equipment, and we produce way more gas than we need for power. we tried to run MRUs, mobile refrigeration units, and ultimately, that reduces the volatility of the gas we flare. But at the end of it, we were still flaring pure methane gas, so it didn't solve the problem. I mean, I think the rub we hear, at least as a novice, not involved in the day-to-day mining of this stuff, but what you start to hear is, man, it just requires so much power in order to do something that's not that beneficial. All we're doing is mining a currency, right? We're not actually generating anything with the Bitcoin. But for us, that's great because we got lots of power. And the solution is, if the solution is give it to someone that needs lots of energy, like Cully said, it's otherwise flared. It's the win-win for both of us.
It's a free market solution that's not no regulation. I mean, there are regulations to you can only flare so much. So there are some elements that, yes, there are things in place that cause you to be able to flare in certain amounts you can flare, but the Bitcoin mining aspect to it is a free market solution that is completely capitalistic. Like, it is helping the environment, but it's doing it through this incentive mechanism that is just part of the Bitcoin network. And that's kind of brilliant. Why do we hear the negatives around Bitcoin mining and people talking about it's bad for the environment? Why aren't people pointing out these things, like I mentioned earlier in my talk about how Bitcoin mining is helping the environment in these ways? Like, this seems like this is a beautiful thing that we should all be talking about way more.
I have a view on it. I gave a keynote this morning, which is really around, as an industry, the Bitcoin mining industry can learn a lot from the recent history of the shale industry and the mistakes that were made around the communication of the true social value of that industry. I mean, you could argue that the shale industry has delivered more value to society in terms of heat, light, transportation, and general prosperity than almost any industry. However, the perception in the public mind is this is an industry of speculators that often is harming the environment for kind of personal profit reasons. There's a total parallel with how the Bitcoin mining industry is perceived. And what the shale industry failed to do was communicate its value and communicate the steps that were being taken to minimize the environmental concerns, which are legitimate, and the climate concerns are legitimate. On the Bitcoin side, we have an opportunity to not make that mistake and to talk about ways that people are sourcing power from renewable sources, providing demand response to the grid to actually stabilize the grid, sourcing power from otherwise flared natural gas, and actually reducing methane emissions, which is a carbon negative activity relative to the status quo of continued flaring. There are good actors and bad actors in every industry. And what we want to say is that people are hearing the message that we need to be responsive to the ESG concerns. And there's actually a lot of good solutions that are being implemented at scale. Cursoe is one example. There are others that are here in and around this crowd of really cool sourcing of stranded renewables and other types of power. That message needs to get out there. And then the value of Bitcoin to society. I mean, I think a lot of people agree with you that like Bitcoin they don't understand the value to society. I think a lot of people in this conference would say it has an enormous benefit to society, which is it's a protection against the debasement of currency, and a family's purchasing power can be stored in this. And if Russia invades your country and you're Ukrainian, you can leave. You remember a password, you take your entire net worth with you. There's all kinds of value being created. And it's based on Bitcoin miners being able to secure the network and secure the blockchain, which is an energy intensive proof of work process.
It seems like these are the kind of conversations that need to happen because these are real world things that are actually beneficial for the environment, and Bitcoin's driving it. But to dive back into kind of more the technical side of, maybe people don't understand why these pipelines can't get there. Like, explain like flush production and the problem that you face, and you get this, this energy kind of upfront for the I know some people are oil and gas, but there's non-oil and gas people. Let's talk about more of the nuts and bolts of the technical reason what this problem solves, and why can't we just build pipelines to all these wells?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's probably a long conversation. I'll try to make it as short as possible. We as an operator are 95+% hooked up to sales, ready, willing, able, and wanting to sell 100% of every molecule of gas we generate to a midstream processor. Two reasons. One, it's the most financially rewarding for us. We get more money from them when they process and sell our gas than we do in our arrangements with Cully and the Bitcoin side. But the problem you hit on it. So we went to these, a lot of the infrastructure up in the Williston Basin is fairly old, and it wasn't designed for 4, 5, 6 well pads that we bring on at 10 million cubic feet a day. We're trying to process and push a ton of gas through an old system, which again, you could upgrade. They could put more pipe in the ground, they could build more compressor stations, but the wells decline so rapidly that in order to do that, it's not cost prohibitive. That they would have to spend so much capital in order to capture every molecule that they sort of just play for a base load. And then as we bring on these pads, we know that we're going to have a certain amount of gas that we can't produce into the system. And so that's where we use solutions like what Cully has in order to try and capture some of that rather than just flare it.
Absolutely. Cully, talk a little bit about the composition of the gas. Like how, people had a question the other day. Somebody asked me, and they said, well, is electrifying natural gas, was that already a thing? Could you just do that? And I said, because they were confused whether, how easy it was to do that. And I explained, yes, it's a thing, you can do that. But talk about some of the nuances there around, we got some wind. Talk about some of the nuances there around like the type of generators and just the logistics that you guys have to jump through a lot of hoops. You got to size things depending on the deployment. You got to have certain gas qualities affect different things, but get into a little bit of the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're trying to take wellhead gas, that's typically going to be rich gas. It's going to have 14, 15, 1,600 BTU per 1,000 cubic feet. That compares to about 1,000 in a pipeline. So you're pretty off spec in terms of what most generators are optimized to handle. So we've gone through an extensive engineering process and an equipment selection and specification process to really, over the last 4 years, optimize our whole solution from the data centers, the type of generator, the packaging around it, the software that controls the relationship between the two, to where we can now deploy a system at scale, like millions of cubic feet per day or hundreds of thousands of cubic feet per day, on rich gas that's going to have a fluctuating pressure, a fluctuating energy content in terms of BTU content, and we can hit a 98 point, I think I just saw the report yesterday for 2021, we were 98.3% available for service with our generators. As long as the gas was there, we were there to take the gas more than 98% of the time. When we started the business, we were at 60%. Wow. And we had to learn a lot of hard lessons operationally. We've got 145 employees now, and a lot of them are very, very talented folks in the field, and that plus a lot of just the, let's call it the know-how, has taken us from the 60% to the 98%. We've invested heavily in software. We have 20 people in San Francisco that have written the whole software stack. And I guess there's a long story there of how it's a process of many innovations. But
that's what I was going to ask. Like, did it start off being like, we want to, conquer this and go completely integrated like you're doing, or was it just a matter of necessity? Like, as these problems came up, you're like, it'd be a lot better if we wrote our software. Or it'd be a lot better if we took control of the power gen or the data centers, et cetera. Like, what was the evolution of that, building that out?
We come at this from an approach that there will be, winter is coming, and crypto winters are absolutely brutal. They make volatility in the oil industry look like nothing, and you really, really have to be the low-cost producer to survive that downturn. And right now, it's kind of a more relaxed environment in mining. You can sort of tolerate higher power prices or some downtime because the mining economics are stronger, but it happens very quickly where all of a sudden the mining economics go to razor thin, and our mentality was to be prepared for that so that Bruce knows we're not going anywhere. We literally will be the last man standing. Our variable cost of power, we believe, is the lowest in the world, except for if you're stealing power, which probably does happen at some scale on the Bitcoin mining grid. But in terms of industrial solutions, we need to never shut off so that we can provide a reliable solution here. And so that meant we need to get every little ounce of fat out of this operation and dial in the. People ask what differentiates us. Our operations are so tight in the oil field right now and so safe, and at such a scale. And it's just a hard work problem. It's just a lot of effort and hours and hiring the right people.
Yeah, and let me follow up on that because, again, for us, ultimately, that's what we want. As an operator, I want someone that can capture all of my gas. That's my goal. And so if his uptime is 60%, I mean, it stinks for his economics and the economics of the Bitcoin mining, but ultimately it's my site, and I get the black eye because they come by with the camera and they see the flare, and I've got a solution that I think is going to resolve that flare. If he can't operate at high efficiency, it becomes my problem again. So I can vouch for you. I mean, we've been doing this for a couple of years, and I think last year we looked at our numbers and it was 98 point something. You guys were up. The uptime on it was 98.5%. So when we started, we did a few pilots. Cursoe was just one of a couple of people that approached us, and the one never quite got off the ground. The other one got off the ground with a pilot, and then it turns out it gets really cold in Montana and North Dakota, and you have to actually know how to maintain this equipment when it's cold, and they just kind of gave up. Whereas Cursoe from the beginning, I mean, you guys, the reason we've stuck with you, the reason we continue to expand is because your efficiency's high. You guys set up an operation in the field right away. You maintain your equipment. You're kind of out of our way. Although you're on our site, we don't have to worry about something of yours getting in our way and preventing us from ultimately doing what we need to do on our site. So, for all those reasons, we've built the partnership. Had any one of those failed, we'd be looking at other solutions. We'd look to do it ourselves, just to gain some economics on it. And frankly, it's not our expertise. So we've had a good partner. They've operated in the way and manner we need them to, and so we've always just kind of built that relationship.
Bruce, like a lot of guys or I'm sure there's people in the audience that may be where you were prior to this experience with Bitcoin, where they're saying, okay, I'm an oil and gas guy. I know my business. I know the upstream side, or maybe they know the midstream side. They don't understand Bitcoin, and they certainly probably don't understand Bitcoin mining. Just your evolution as somebody, like when you first heard about it, just the initial thoughts that you had, and how has your mindset around it changed as you've learned more and as you've seen it work? And then how does that, how do you translate that to your friends and colleagues and people in the industry and tell them about your journey with this, right? Like how did it evolve for you, I guess?
I think, I don't think it was Cully, I think it was Andrew that called us at some point. We had a mutual friend in the oil business, and we were struggling-ish with some of this flaring and trying to figure out solutions without a midstream partner that was willing to make an investment. And we tried 2 or 3 different things, and I got a call and they said, well, would you guys ever consider mining Bitcoin? And at that point, I think I knew what Bitcoin was, but I had no idea what it actually involved. 3-4 years ago, I said, yeah, sure, bring it on. I mean, we all like to innovate, we like to pioneer. We were just going to flare the gas anyway. If they're game, we're game. So it started as just a simple pilot. One unit, one well. I wasn't going to sign a big contract until they proved to me they knew what they were doing. In the meantime, it became demystified, talking with Cully, researching it, understanding it a bit more. It's, for me as an operator, I think there's different models here, but we've chosen the path of a simple arm's length arrangement where we sell them gas. And we sell them gas at a decent, reasonable price, because otherwise we would flare that gas. So I've never had to figure out how to open up an account and clear the Bitcoin through a mechanism to pay myself and my mineral owners. We just have a kind of arm's length relationship. But the seeing the equipment on site, watching them manage it day to day, it's really easy. It's no different than operating a well site. It's just, where they're at, it's just become part of our operation.
So how orange-pilled are you at this point? Is it forced you to kind of get more into the Bitcoin ethos, or are you just kind of like, I'm an oil guy and I want to sell my oil and buy and sell my gas, or have you fully gone down the rabbit hole, or I don't know?
I'm not down the rabbit hole. I'd like to get down the rabbit hole. This conference has been eye-opening, and just to understand and see more about it. But I'm still the guy that when I say I'm mining Bitcoin, that's about the extent of it. That's about all I know, is that these guys are mining Bitcoin.
Well, it sounds like it works out really well. Cully, just like the challenges of flared gas mining, because it's one thing to mine off grid. You're having to generate your own power, securing an energy source, generating your own power, being remote, being mobile, being flexible, being able to, do all these things in harsh conditions. This is easy, right? This is like anybody could just go out and do this. But talk to some of the challenges of flared gas, specifically mining.
Yeah, I think it's all about the ops. The operation side of the business is so intensive, and from engineering to actually the team that operates it, there's a lot that has to go into that. It's really hard. It's probably the hardest way to mine Bitcoin in terms of the effort required.
It's no joke.
And the logistics. But again, if you get it right, there's a big, for us, there's been a big, benefit to doing that, because we feel like we do have that last man standing, low cost power that we lock in if you can solve all the technical and operational problems, which was what we've been working on for the last 4+ years now, and we've really got a product that works. I mean, to give you an example, we were at a site with Kraken. It was a 5-well pad site. We had probably 8 megawatts of mining deployed at that site.
Wow. And
we ended up having to remobilize that for you guys to another site. And so in the span of 1 week, we took a 10,000 horsepower of power generation systems, 8 modular data centers, loaded with several thousand ASICs, and we have a system of logistics that allows us to take that, pack it up, move it, redeploy it in less than a week. That's an at-scale, multi-million cubic foot per day kind of a deployment that we can move and minimize that downtime. So the amount of things that have to go into being able to execute at that kind of a pace and scale is what we've been working on really, really hard, and solving a lot of problems to get there.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we've never wanted to undertake it, frankly. I mean, for those of you that are oil and gas operators, you know that not everything goes perfectly on a site. It doesn't just operate 100% of the time and provide you guys kind of a constant gas stream. So we would have to get good at managing those logistics and those issues and the maintenance on it. We've just decided we didn't want to do that. I mean, what we have done for our part as we've grown and evolved, we've tried to take it from a site by site. We've got part of our field that's just underinvested, and we've got 10 or 12 sites. We've actually made an investment to gather the gas into a central site for our own sake, and then we can set you guys up on that central site. So rather than it being totally dependent on if power goes out at one site, now you're down. If power goes down at that one site, we just lose some of the gas, but we should have a more constant or steady stream of at least base load gas for them. So one of the evolutions as we've gotten more comfortable with this, we've started to make investments in the midstream piece of our business in order to try and facilitate additional capture for the mobile Bitcoin mining.
Bruce, talk about some of the benefits you get going directly, basically bringing the market to the wellhead. Yes, maybe the price may not be NYMEX, but you're avoiding things like fuel, fees, and just talk about some of the, you're really bringing the market right there. So there's some benefits to that, right?
Yeah, I mean, for us, the benefit is just having control of it, I'd say. The economics, like I said, are always going to be better, more beneficial for us to sell to our midstream guys. But ultimately, if I'm the guy that gets the black eye for flaring, when I feel like it's not my fault, that's I don't like being in that fight. I'd rather have control. And so with Cursoe's help and their responsiveness and ability to kind of scale up as we need it, we can kind of shape a solution that, other than just crossing my fingers and hoping that the midstream guy will put in a new compressor to take it all, I have control over it. So that's been the main reason why we've chosen this path, is just we get more direct control over our ability to flare less gas.
You're being really nice to midstream companies right now. They want to have a one-way obligation where you have to do everything. You're committed to them. They burn a lot of fuel. You're efficient. You're coming right there. There's not all the line loss, the fuel. I mean, there is something to be said about bringing that market and your point control. There's benefits there. And I mean, like controlling your own destiny, especially when you're trying to produce oil, that's a big deal. I don't know. I think that the flared side, to me, the biggest point here is that bringing it back to this free market incentive that drives an environmental benefit and an economic benefit for both parties. Both parties. Like this is how it's supposed to work, right? It doesn't need to be top down. We need to come up with solutions that can do things that are beneficial for the environment, but that also are economic. So I don't know. Cully's really a pioneer. I want to give you props because you've really paved the way. And we met a few months back at a digital Wildcatter event, and just realizing that it seems obvious now, but the path that you blazed in this space, I don't think it was very obvious in 2018, man. So props to what you built.
I appreciate that.
It's really cool.